Okay, we're here with, she's a comedian, she's a writer, and she's an actress. And you know her best probably as the creator and star of Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, everyone's favorite show. And she has a new special.
Everyone is a very please go on.
Listen, we're just we're being inclusive, okay?
That's very inclusive of a very small part of the population.
That's
and
not
they
true.
Thank you for
That's
that.
not true. That was a very hugely popular show.
Popular is an interesting. Sure, yes, it was. It absolutely was.
It was. I think you need to embrace that. And her new special, which is Death. Let me do my special. It's on Netflix right now.
Great.
Please welcome Rachel Bloom. Rachel Bloom. Hi.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm good. It's always really nice to see you.
Always. I love seeing you.
You're just a really kind person.
Thank you.
I was just telling, actually, our nanny was like, oh my God, she's such a fan of yours. And I was like, also, she's like really nice and kind to other women, which is just really wonderful.
Thank you. Now I have to start being that way to men, which is like,
they're fine. That's a different thing.
I know. They can be nice to each other or whatever they are. You know, it's not really our problem.
They got themselves.
Let's talk about your special. Death is a big character in your special.
He is.
And
he is.
He is. That's
well, I
good.
modeled some of the character based off of like men I've interacted with in like writers' rooms. And so Death to me is a he.
Yes, I like that.
Yes.
I'd like to start thinking of it that way as well. And I'm sure many of our listeners feel the same exact way.
And not just a he, like a dude bro. Like,
yeah, it was always like either, I mean, there were different ways we experimented with the character that like, there was a part of him that was incel-y, and then there was a part of him that was just like a dude bro. Cause like, look, hostility in like from comedians comes in different forms. But either way, it's when I'm saying bad things to myself, what is my inner voice? And my inner voice is the men who I perceived as funny are being like, that's a fucking joke. Okay, I guess you could technically call that a joke. That's my inner hateful voice. Mm-hmm. Are those guys.
Is being judged by those guys.
Being judged by those guys and them seeing that I am a fraud. Honestly, I mean, it's like, I still have, after all these years, a little bit of imposter syndrome of like, I'm very sensitive, and my first writer's room and experiences I had around that time was like, there would be these guys who just got really, really tough and smart, and they were great joke writers, but comedy was a way to assert dominance over other people, you know? And I've never been good at like being insulted and coming back with an insult. I'm also not a club comic. So that's the thing is I haven't been hardened by, I've always been like an alt comic UCB TV writer. So I haven't been hardened by like drunk people in clubs throwing beers at me in a way that might have made me tougher and better at like insults and comebacks.
That's interesting. I mean, I would think that because you're assembling lots of different writers' rooms because you've had multiple shows.
I've only had one so far.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, you have a new show that you just announced.
It's a pilot.
But
it makes me look really good.
Yeah, well, I feel like you need to believe that you are good because
I'm sorry. I'm underplaying things, and I don't know why. You're right.
But what was there before Crazy Ex-Girlfriend? You were doing something that was.
I was a TV writer, and I was like auditioning, and I was doing shows at UCB.
Were you a star in something or on TV?
No, I was doing YouTube videos.
Star. Yeah.
Oh, is that how I got to know you? It was something before Crazy Ex-Girlfriend.
It was my YouTube. I was doing like YouTube videos.
Oh, okay. Okay. So that's how I got to know you.
But I want to assemble. I have a couple of TV things in the works where I would love to be able to assemble another writer's room. I love being in a writer's room.
Yeah.
And I'd love to have another show. I have a couple shows like in the works.
Right. Yeah.
It's always funny what we decide to like announce and not announce because everyone, you know, like everyone is working on, if our careers were judged by effort, everyone would be number one on IMDb, right? Everyone has like 1,000 things going on. It's just, okay, are you then fortunate to get to that next level and have it actually like, for lack of a better term, count?
Right, because it doesn't. And I also conversely, the stuff is true. Like sometimes when you announce certain things, you know, that aren't necessarily a sure thing. It's like, oh, we're going to announce. You know, I don't like the announcements of things. I like just putting things out there. You know,
me too. And this like the show we just announced. So my husband and I have a show with ABC.
Congratulations on getting a husband.
Thank you.
By the way.
It's so funny because I was just listening to your interview with Sharon Horgan, who I just have been obsessed with. I love her so much. Another just brilliant and also kind person. And actually Catastrophe, it made me realize I want to rewatch Catastrophe for the show that I'm doing right now. The fuck was I gonna you're talking about divorce. And I am so, for all of my like, I'm fucking crazy and I talk about my asshole and dicks. I've been with the same guy. Those are the two wildest things. I've been with the same guy for about 16 years.
Wow.
I'm a child bride.
Wow.
It's very
16 years. How old were you when you met him?
We were friends since I was 18 in the comedy community, because the comedy community is, incestuous. And then we started dating when I was 21.
So you were only friends for the first few years?
Yeah, I mean, we made out once.
And then what happened that you guys got together?
Well, I dated a bunch of his friends.
That's
because
always
that's
a good
what
way
you
to get his attention.
do, yeah.
Yes.
And then we just realized we really liked being together. And one day we just kissed. I mean, it was actually really, I was in LA. I was born and raised in LA. And so I was back visiting my parents during college before I did a theater trip to Amsterdam. And he was here for business because he was already a working TV writer. And he invited me to this barbecue at this place he was renting in Santa Monica. And we like made out on the beach and like it was magical. And I went to Amsterdam and came back and we started dating for real. And we've just been together ever since.
That's cute.
It's really square. I would have never, my emotions around love were so volatile and the people I went for were so fucking weird before him. I would have never thought that I would be this person in a monogamous relationship for so long, but here I am.
Why do you think, why was your relationship with other men like so volatile, or why were you attracted to those types of men? I mean, I did the same thing, but I'm curious.
I liked the thrill of the chase. And if I'm going to get like psychological about it, I liked the feeling of the thrill of the chase. It was the greatest drug. Love was my first serious crush started when I was in about third grade. And I remember the emotions that I have. It's my friend Zach. He knows all about it. The emotions that I had for Zach from third through seventh grade were as real. And when I say real, they were as passionate and all-consuming as anything I ever felt as an adult from a very young age. And there's a term, because on Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, it was a show kind of all about obsessive love. And so there's this term called limerence, which is like the science. Have you heard of this term? I love it.
I love it.
It's like the scientific term for obsession. And it's what being in love is. And I was always a very limerent person. And so I would go from guy to guy who was like emotionally unavailable. And also like, I feel like I went for, I feel like I still like my type, you hear you like go for people who are like your parents. I have two types. I have one type who kind of looks like a male version of my mom. So like very, very lanky and skinny. And then there's a type that's the male version of my dad, which is like stocky and funny. And that's the guy I'm with right now. But like really, if you broke them down, it's either I go for my mom or I go for my dad.
That's funny because people don't talk a lot or enough, I guess, about going for your mom, because that's got to be a thing too.
Yeah.
Psychosomatically, like there's got to be something where you are drawn to the people who remind you of your mother.
It's the first love of your parents are the first love of your life. And I see it in my daughter now where this is when she was like 2, she noticed our wedding rings and she said, what are those? We said, they're wedding rings. And she's like, what's that? We're married because we love each other. And she goes, I love you. I love mama. I want to marry mama. And I get it. And I was like really flattered. And I was like, hopefully the laws will change. No, I didn't say that. But I get it. Like
hopefully the laws will go back 150 years.
Yes. But it is weird having a kid because it is being in almost platonic love. Like I can't, it's really hard to explain, but I get that feeling of like, I want to marry.
Like I want to be with you forever.
Yeah. It's just the feeling of like, you just like want to be around that person. And I feel like we all kind of have that a little bit DNA wise with our parents maybe. But anyway, so the other thing I've learned about limerence, which I find really interesting. Is it just the act of being in love, or isn't there another definition? It's kind of a more
what's happening to your body.
It's what's happening to your body.
Oh, I was going to look. I was going to look it up because I want to read it to our listeners because this word keeps coming up. I was on vacation with my British girlfriend and she used that word. And I was like, oh, yes. I remember hearing it and being like, I was fascinated by this word because it kind of has a broader meaning. But
So it's the state of being infatuated or obsessed with another person, typically experienced involuntarily and characterized by a strong desire for reciprocation of one's feelings, but not primarily for a sexual relationship.
Yes.
So, like you
okay.
said,
That's interesting.
it's like in love platonically, like you said.
I mean, for me in limerence, other than like child platonic love is the only child platonic love.
Child marriage
Child
is limerence.
To be clear, I'm not in limerence with my child. But yeah, that's interesting that it says like it's platonic, that it's I mean, for me that wasn't necessarily the case because I'm so fucking straight. But the interesting thing is like when you look at what's happening to yourself chemically, and the woman who studied this was named Helen Fisher, and she just recently died, but she studied being in love. And they basically scanned people's brains while they were in limerence. And what they found was a couple things. And I might be butchering this, so sorry for any love scientists out there. I believe that when you're in love, your serotonin plummets, which is like your well-being chemical, which also, I have generalized anxiety disorder. I already have low serotonin. That's what Prozac does. It helps my neurons transfer serotonin. So before I was on Prozac, I already have low-ass serotonin. Suddenly I fall in love. Whatever serotonin is left is fucking gone. And that's like your well-being. Okay, I'm good. I'm happy right now, right? So that's fucking gone. When you think of this person, they flood you with dopamine, which is like already addictive. But if you have no serotonin, you need that person in order to feel good. And so it's close to like being on cocaine or like OCD, which I've also experienced. And so that kind of obsessive mind, that involuntary obsession of feeling like your brain is being hacked by a dark love force is how I really lived a lot of my life. And I think it took a lot of learning from those toxic relationships and sometimes unreciprocated situations to really make me, I don't know, like find myself in a really healthy but wonderful relationship. And I fell in love with him still, but luckily I fell in love with a healthy person.
Way. Yeah. Well, that tracks. I mean, most of us when we're younger, go after the wrong things. Like we're not focused on what we want. We're focused on the way we feel.
Yeah.
And as we mature, I mean, it doesn't sound like you were that old, but you seem to have a good grasp on what you wanted. And because knowing someone for several years actually is a big benefit to understanding somebody and making a educated,
sit back.
responsible, lie down, responsible decision. In your special, you talk a lot about your fear of losing your dog when you were pregnant, which I find so funny. Why were you, because your dog was old? Is that why you thought he was going to die?
Yeah. She now just turned what we think she turned 15. She's a rescue, so we don't know. Wow. I was just with her this morning. It made life and death. It made the cycle of life and death very real to me. And I'd had little existential crises. I'm taking off my shoes. I'd had little
And take your socks off too. I have some
Thank
toe
you.
spacers. Do you want to put them on?
I don't need.
It seems like you might want
Do
to.
you put on toe spacers when you're
seems
not
like
getting a pedicure?
They're not those kinds of toe spacers. I have the start of what is a little bunionette, and so I'm calling it that to make it sound more delicate than what it is.
I love it.
And you put on these mine are black, so they're not, and you put them in between your toes so when your toes get a bunion, your foot starts to narrow, and you want to keep your toes spread out. So I put them on to keep my toes out so that my foot. It is working. Wow. It's fucking working. My cousin said to me the other day, "Don't wear those. They're so stupid, and you've never even spoken to a doctor about it." I'm like, I am a doctor, and they are working. My toes are starting to spread out, so I think everything's going to be fine for my bunionette. Let me see your feet. They're very nice.
Yeah, my
very
heels are
narrow
always a
feet.
little dry.
Yeah, but whose aren't? Yeah, I
Oh,
always.
what is that?
Because we're walking on them.
Yeah, that's what it is. You're right.
Or in my case, rollerblading to every meeting I have.
Oh my.
That's so fucking cool.
I know. Thank you. So what? Yes.
So it made life and death real. There was something. First of all, like when I was pregnant, I was really nauseous for the first 4 months, and it made me depressed. And it's like a chicken or egg thing where like I can't tell if I was depressed because I was nauseous or if I was depressed anyway, but I would have these waves of nausea, and with the nausea came emotions and kind of an anxiety and depression. Because it's just your hormones are going fucking nuts.
Yeah.
And there was something that happened where time, I might say it in the special, but like time basically became very real. That suddenly I was not only looking at these apps that was like, okay, your baby's 3 weeks, 5 weeks, 10 weeks, 15 weeks or whatever. But also I was, you start to think about preschools, and then you start to go, okay, well, what public school district am I in? And you start thinking about your life in a concrete way that you don't otherwise do. And I think that being in entertainment and comedy kind of flattens out age in a real way. Like I never really know how old anyone is because everyone kind of seems anyway. I don't know. It keeps people young.
Yeah, that's true.
It really does. And so it was one of the first times in life that I really started to think about grown up stuff in the future in that concrete way of like, what school is she going to go to? How are we going to save for college? And it suddenly put time and everything to do with time. It made it like too real. It felt like I was suddenly on mushrooms. And then I just thought about my dog, because at a certain point, picturing my dog at age 5, at age 6, 7, 8, at a certain point, the dog's not going to be there. And it just made me so sad.
Yeah, I can imagine. It just made me think, like, what if children were only here for a short period of time? Like, that's what I just started thinking about when you started saying that about dogs. Like, what if we only had children for 10 or 15 years? I mean, can you imagine? That would make the dog thing seem so easy. I don't have an end of life thing with my dogs. Like, I accept it because they're all rescues. I always get them halfway through their life anyway. Or in Doug's case, my most recent acquisition, he was 9 months, and that's the youngest dog I've ever gotten. So that's just a huge advantage for me because I know I'm going to get a good 10 years out of him, you know?
Yeah.
But whenever my dogs have left, it's interesting that you talk about that because, obviously I've never had a full-term pregnancy, but to think about the thoughts that you would have about death when you're about to give birth, because I find that those two things dovetail quite often in lives. Like you lose a father or a loved one right before somebody has a baby.
Yep.
That's always seems to be a very common occurrence. Yeah. And so I could see why it would bring up all those thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, it's primal, it's bloody, it's first breath, last breath. We all just come from like goo and muck and
Come.
Like it's all. I was in Atlanta because everything films in Atlanta. My husband was doing something in Atlanta, and I was walking around, and there was like a kind of swampy place that was teeming with life, and it also stunk. And I was like, this is life. Life is just stinky goo, and the stinkier and gooier, the more it's filled with all sorts of life, and that's what life is, right? We're all just like stinky piles of goo. And so giving birth
is a stinky pile of goo.
And then also like, carrying, when you're pregnant, the stuff that starts coming out of your vagina, and I mean the smells, like your vagina starts smelling, and it's life.
Yeah.
And like when you're ovulating, like have you ever looked at like pictures of cervixes?
I actually have seen
It's
pictures
really
of
interesting,
cervixes.
right? That like,
I mean, I don't know if I could pick one out of a lineup, but I have seen them.
yeah, they're like, it's like they look like little wet buttholes.
As opposed to a dry butthole.
As opposed to a little dry butthole. And they're like very pink. But what's interesting is when a person with a cervix is like fertile, it's like covered in gunk. It's like gooey. It's meant to be gooey. And when it's like dry, it's just past your period when like you're not meant to take in sperm. And so like it's all like just like blood and goo and death. And I think there's a line, Summer and Smoke. I think it's the Tennessee Williams play. There's the lead of that show is studying to be a medical student, and he's saying to the woman in the show, Alma, he's saying like he's pulling down an anatomy picture, and he's like, this is what we are. And I'm paraphrasing, but he's like, we're just meat. We're just gunk. We're just disgusting on the inside. And that's what pregnancy really mired me in. And then I actually gave birth and I'll never forget like looking across the way, there's like a giant mirror in the room where I gave birth, and like seeing the sight of like after I gave birth, my open vagina with the placenta at the surface and still seeing a little bit of the umbilical cord coming out of that.
God.
I remember what that looked like. It's gross. It's fucking weird. But it's life.
My cousin just gave birth and her asshole was inside out when
Yep.
she got done giving birth, like
no.
inside out. And my other cousin was describing it to me and I'm like, I just can't picture exactly what that looks like. And she's like, don't worry about it. But like her vagina lips, the inside of her vagina just on the table lying there. And it's like, oh my God, it's so treacherous to even think about.
Oh, I've only had one, but my vagina.
Are you going to have more babies?
I think I'm just one and done. But I now there's a sea monster aesthetic with my vagina now.
Like a sea monster.
There's like a little bit of prolapse with it, where like if you look at my vagina, it's like bleh. It just looks like someone going. Bleh. That's what it is. And I asked doctor, I'm like, is it normal? She's like, yeah, you're fine. It's just you pushed a huge thing out of your vagina, so it's just like. Bleh.
So back to male comics. Speaking of blood, so what is your experience? So when you're doing because you're doing stand up now.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously you're special. You're doing stand up. How has your experience been dealing with men in the stand up world? Really?
I think that I'm. They're a lot nicer. I think generally the culture's gotten a lot nicer, and also I'm coming into these spaces now with some acclaim,
Right.
which
Makes
changes
a
how
difference.
people treat you. Like I don't even know if the way I've interacted with certain toxic people is gendered. I think some people are just shitty to everyone. Like I can't really parse out how much of it is because I'm a girl and how much of it is just because I was, when you're low on the totem pole and you're clearly insecure, you're just an easy punching bag.
Mm-hmm.
So now if I come into a comedy space, there's a certain amount of power that I have. And maybe it's that I carry myself with more confidence, or it's just people aren't as mean.
Yeah, I think that's an important thing to recognize as a woman, like for everyone who's listening, who people call in all the time asking, like, how do you get confident or how do you, I always want to inject everybody with confidence because it is true. Like sometimes you do have to fake it because you can smell insecurity on people. And that's not a quality that you want to be putting forward. So even if you have to fake being confident, whatever you think that might be, or if you're mimicking someone else that's confident, like that is a worthwhile endeavor because I do believe in faking it until you make it. I do believe that if you, act the part, like, I pretended I was wealthy and successful long before I was waiting tables and taking people out to dinner. Like, I've got the tab. They're like, you're a waitress. I'm like, oh, don't worry. I've got money coming. Like, I believed that about
That's
myself.
amazing.
And it turned out to be true. And I really do believe in faking it until you make it. I do believe that in all areas, not just confidence and not just career, but in all areas. Like, I'm going to have a successful relationship, a romantic relationship. If that's what you want, you have to act like that's what's going to happen.
I guess what I wish I'd tried doing with some of these guys early in my career was I wish I would have been like, hey, can we get lunch? And then just at lunch, and this is a very female thing, been like, I think you're so funny. Like, I'd love to talk to you more about it. And because that way, then they can't bully someone, or maybe they still can, who like took them out to lunch and was like, yeah, I'm still learning, like any help. It's a very indirect female way to deal with a problem, but like I wish I'd tried killing them with kindness more just to see what would have happened.
I mean, it's interesting to think about that, but again, I feel like that's us having to give them and to assuage their
100%.
ego to make them like us, and it's like fuck you. Like, I get what you're saying, but I also am like, no. I'm not going out of my way. I deserve as much as respect as anyone standing here, even before I was successful, just because it takes so much guts to do what we do. You have to be brave. You're already dealing with a live audience. Now I need people behind the scenes being assholes too.
So on stage, I have that courage that you're talking about, where there's something that happens when I'm on stage that I'm like, yeah, I fucking belong here. Off stage, I don't like. I'm wildly more sensitive.
Yeah.
It's just like who I am. And it's something I'm like actively still working on.
Well, because I don't think you can change the fact that you're sensitive, but you can change your reaction to your sensitivity.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. what I'm working on too is beating myself up less for being sensitive because that's what's bad is when you're sensitive and then you go, why the fuck are you letting this bother you? You're such a fucking idiot. Now you're sensitive and you're calling yourself a fucking idiot.
Yeah, of course.
You know, it's like internet comments being the best example of like, well, don't read internet comments. And it's like, well, great. Now I'm telling myself don't read internet comments and I feel sensitive. So it's like berating yourself doesn't help.
No, it does not help. You have to be talking very positively to yourself. Like we all do.
Yeah.
Especially now, during this kind of period of time we're all living in where we don't know what the fuck the world is going to come to, at least the world that we knew. We grew up in America. We thought like democracy is a thing that is indestructible. And now we're like, oh my God, if any of these people, like these cabinet picks go through, what happens to the FBI? What happens to all of our, government agencies? And you're like, what I know to be true might not be true at all or might not be true for very much longer.
I mean, remember when the biggest news was the president got a blowjob and stuck a cigar up someone's
Pikachu. Yeah, I remember.
That was the biggest news. That's how I found out what blowjobs were.
All I remember thinking about that was, I remember when that story came out, and I thought, now, because every father knows their daughter is being sexually active, but they're not thinking about it. They're putting it to the back of their mind. They're like, I don't want to think about, and I'm certainly not going to envision my daughter sucking someone's dick. And then poor Monica Lewinsky's father knew for sure that his daughter was giving a blowjob and knew that about the cigar. Like, I could not get that out of my head. I think the first time I met Monica, I think I knew I was smart enough not to tell her that. Anyway, she's coming on the podcast soon. We can talk to her about it.
I'm such a fan. Also, my dad went, I don't know if it was law school. He knew someone involved in the case at the time. And at the time, I was like 11. And I'd met the guy like a couple times before. I think he was really close with my dad when I was younger. And he said something to my dad like, I was very close with Monica's family. And obviously, if anything like this were to ever happen with Rachel, I'd help out. My dad was like, oh, my 11-year-old. So if my 11, are you saying if my 11-year-old daughter ever sucks the president's cock? I don't know why I know this story, but it's been something I've wanted to talk to Monica about.
I want to tell something that Monica said to me. We were at a friend's house the other night, and Monica was there, and she said this, and I think she wouldn't mind me sharing this. She said when she had the opportunity to vote for Hillary Clinton in 2016, not only did she take it, but after she voted for her, she started to make plans to move to England because she knew that this wasn't going to be a great place for her to live with Hillary Clinton as the president. Not that Hillary Clinton was threatening her in any way, but just societally speaking, being the woman that did that in such a public way. And now Hillary Clinton was the president of the United States. She just thought she would be safer in the UK. And at the same time, cast her ballot for Hillary Clinton. And I got goosebumps when she told me that because I was like, wow, what a fucking predicament, What a thing to have to do and a thing to have to consider. On that note, we're going to take a break and we're going to be right back with Rachel Bloom. And we're back with Rachel Bloom.
We are back and we're going to take some callers and some emails.
We're giving advice.
Yes.
Okay. Are you ready?
Yeah.
All right. We'll start with an email. This comes from Jen. Jen says, Dear Chelsea, longtime listener, first-time writer. My husband and I, both in our mid-40s, have been married for 10 years. We have one son together, and he has a son from a previous relationship, so 2 kids. We have started the divorce process and hope for it to be final in the spring. We haven't told the kids, and we'll wait until we know what's happening with the house, etc. We're still living under one roof and are mostly cordial. It's never been a real outwardly affectionate relationship, so not many changes there. Here's the deal. My soon-to-be ex has not told his parents. They're in their 80s, and his dad is not doing so great, but okay enough that he's still at home with his wife as his primary caregiver. They live close enough to us that their family gathers on short notice about once a week. I've been able to avoid these gatherings or stop by for a couple of minutes with an excuse to get out of there. Our anniversary, gross, was a couple of weeks ago this past weekend, and my soon-to-be ex asked if I would stop by their house so they could give us an anniversary card.
What's wrong with him?
I declined. My issue is that I'm starting to look like an asshole because their son is lying to them. My soon-to-be ex says he's not telling them because of their health conditions. My friend and family circle know the details of what is going on, as I don't lie to those that I'm close with. Am I wrong for declining all of the family interaction? Do I go along with this lie? What sort of family acts like this?
Ooh.
Love your show, Jen.
Boy.
You go first.
That's a really unfair situation to be put in.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how sick his parents are. Like, there's a part of me that's like, is there a different lie he could tell so that that doesn't involve you? Because, like, you can't control that he's lying, but what you can control is, like, I'm not participating. So can he say that you're going through a mental health thing and he doesn't want to discuss it, but you'll be a little,
but then
I don't
she's
know.
the victim of that lie.
No, you're
too.
right. You're right. I mean, I guess look, the solution is just fucking tell his parents.
Well, also, I would just, this is another Mel Robbins. Let him lie all he wants, but do not participate in his lying. Fuck off.
Like, they're your ex-in-laws now. Like,
people are sick all the time. Also, by the way, like, yes, I was gonna say the same thing. How sick are they? But also, that's not your problem. Your marriage is ending. You need closure. Everyone needs to know about it.
They're going to find out.
They're going to find out, and you don't want to be an asshole for participating in the lie. You know, so I would say extricate yourself from that and let him tell them and say you're not doing anything anymore with them.
And if they think or if he's still lying and they just think you're a bitch, then like, okay, they're not your in-laws anymore.
Or you can also say, hey, if you don't tell them, I will, but then that puts the onus on you and you don't need that kind of onus to have to tell them, because what if he doesn't tell them and then you do have to tell them? You can threaten to do that, and then when he doesn't tell them, I don't know. Hopefully
but her kids know, right?
No, the kids don't know because they're waiting to see what happens with the house. I feel like that might be the turning point here.
That's when you can start being like, fuck it, if the kids know.
But there's no obligation to participate in seeing his parents all the time.
Just politely
stop that.
decline.
Just say you're not, whatever. Like, whatever you need to say. But you also don't have to lie for other people. And I'm sick of people wanting you to participate in their lives.
I mean, at some point, the parents are going to be like, did we do something wrong that you're not coming over? And at that point, it's like, we're getting a divorce.
Yeah,
Did
but
your
it's
son
not
tell you?
It's not your problem unless they
Right.
call her specifically, and that at which point she could be like, yeah, we're getting divorced.
Exactly.
Right,
I thought he
right.
told you.
But
I
if
thought
they
you
just
knew.
think you're an asshole,
Yeah.
that's not your problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, you won't be dealing with them for very long anyway if you're getting divorced.
Yeah. I would have assumed your husband or your son would have told you, I think is the line
Right,
after, like,
right.
oh no, we're going to.
Problem solved. There
Yep.
you go.
All right. Well, our next caller is Brad. Let's go with Maya. Maya writes,
Maya writes.
Dear Chelsea. Oh,
Oh,
yes.
shit. We have to put our headphones on, Rachel. Do you want me to help you?
Dear Chelsea, I probably don't need to explain why dating as an Israeli American has been daunting and scary this year. I barely identify as Jewish. My mom has to tell me when all the holidays are and to show up for dinner. But your nationality, of course, is something that's hard to hide. Before this year, my dual nationality was something I was more than happy to share up front because it's a core part of my upbringing. But now I feel like I have to hide it because who knows who is on the other side of these dating apps. I'm a bleeding liberal too, so it's a higher chance that like-minded liberals I'm seeking are also anti-Israel. I'm fully American passing since I grew up in the US, so I can of course just not mention it when chatting in an app, but honestly, it's such an emotional issue for people right now. I do not want to be the recipient of someone's misdirected rage. Dating is already brutal enough, and this has tipped me over the edge toward just giving up. I've tried putting the Jewish filter on the apps, but I live in Texas, so after swiping through the 5 Jewish men I see, no one is left. There also isn't a Jewish organization I've been able to find to meet people in real life that's not religious. I'm agnostic. I'm really happy on my own and live close to family and great friends, so moving for the sake of dating really is of no interest to me. I don't at all feel desperate for a relationship, but I do want to find my person, and it doesn't seem like the geopolitical circumstances are going to change anytime soon. I guess the gist of my question is, if I don't want to shut myself off to a wider pool of non-Jewish men in an already challenging dating world, how can I approach dating in an open and optimistic way that still preserves my emotional safety instead of out of fear? Any advice? Maybe you're one straight, single, agnostic Jewish man or his sisters are listening. Maya.
Well, hopefully they are listening. Hi, Maya.
Hi.
Hi, this is our special guest. Rachel Bloom is here today.
Awesome.
Hi.
Hi. You've got Jews in the house. So what dating apps are you on?
Currently I'm not super active, but usually whenever I join, it's Hinge.
Mm-hmm. And do you like present yourself as Israeli? You don't. You're just
No, I used to, pre last year. And now it's just kind of, I don't know. It's such a polarizing topic that I don't know. I feel like it will automatically turn a lot of people away.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I don't think it's worth advertising. You know what I mean? You don't have to be like I'm Israeli because that almost sounds like you're only it
Making
makes
a political
you yeah
statement.
making a political statement.
Also, and it also centers your identity in a way that like might not be relevant to
who you are.
actually your dating life at
Sure.
all.
For sure.
Where it's like,
for sure.
if I put on a dating profile, like, I am of Ukrainian descent. Okay. Like, what? I mean, what?
Yeah. Like I grew up in the States. And so it's like, sure, I have family there and I speak Hebrew, but it's not, my current identity, I would say.
And have you experienced men being like once they find out that you're Israeli that they don't want to date you?
No, but I also honestly have just been kind of nervous to go on the apps this year. I've just been actively avoiding it. I did join Hinge last month for like a week. I chatted with a few people, didn't mention anything, set up a few dates, and then I just ended up canceling them all because just the thought of
I think
I don't know, it made me anxious.
I know, but I don't think you should catastrophize the situation because that is not. It is not a boiling point for every single person in this world. It's shameful that people are blaming anyone who's from Israel for Israel's policies. And listen, this conversation is an unwinnable conversation because this has been going on for eons and eons.
You can't help who you are. Like,
Yeah,
regardless of where
exactly.
anyone stands, like, this is literally just like who you are. Like,
And that many people in this world have no interest in that at all. The Palestinian Gaza, the Gaza conflict and the Israeli Gaza conflict. Many people don't even care about that. They don't understand it. They don't want to get involved. I know we're dealing with this movement that everyone that we're experiencing since October 7th, but that's not inclusive of the whole world. So I feel like you're projecting your worst fears onto your dating situation when it's not necessary to do that. If you go on a date with a guy and you go out with him a couple of times, you're going to get a sense of who he is and what he stands for, and if that's going to be something that he's staunchly against. And I would venture to guess that it won't be. Like you're not going to be only running into people that are pro-Palestinian and anti-Israel. Even though you're in Texas, there are still plenty of people who are not engaged in that conflict, who are not paying attention to that conflict. We're living in America. You know what I mean? Like there are a million things going on that people are interested in, and many people are not interested in politics. So I think you have to reframe the way that you're like looking into things. You don't need to represent yourself on the dating apps that way. I think what you need to do is be a little bit more open-minded and try not to come from this place of fear, and try to be like, if someone meets you 3 or 4 times and gets to know you, even if they do have strong feelings about that, they're going to go, oh, well, wait, here's a perfect example of someone who's from Israel, who, is not, whatever your position is, like you're not a threat to that person. You don't have completely opposing views to that person. You probably would find that out sooner than 3 or 4 dates before you even reveal your personal life. And I feel like religion is personal, and you're not even, you're not really even you're not even very religious. You said you're kind of agnostic, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm an agnostic Jew too. I relate to Jews. Absolutely. I was raised that way. And, I'm very proud to be a Jewish person, but that doesn't preclude me from interacting with people who have different mindsets. And so give yourself a little bit more like wiggle room in the dating area. You're going to know, someone and get to know someone a little bit before you even have to make that kind of decision or call.
as a fear-based
Jew,
atheist Jew, 2 suggestions and questions. 1, have you considered J-Swipe, or does it suck?
I've never actually heard of that.
Me neither.
I
What's
just-
J-Swipe?
I don't
Okay, so
think there's
this
a
is.
lot of
I've been with my husband for 16 years, so I never internet dated. So this is mom coming in. J-Swipe is what I believe what J-Date now is, and it's its own app.
Okay.
Just if you're worried about, because I get it, like you're worried about just like someone coming at you for something you truly can't change about yourself. So I just wonder about, I've heard different things about JSwipe. Again, I apologize if maybe I'm saying an app that is already defunct because I've never online dated. But the other thing
Let's look it
is,
up. See if JSwipe is active.
the other thing is, because I'm fully like an atheist, but I don't know how much you've checked out local temples and like Jewish organizations, but like, and maybe this is like an LA thing, but there are some reform places that are like, the God is optional. This is much more about the culture, that I wonder if you did a little bit of poking around and digging, because there are certainly places like that in LA where you can fully like be an atheist and it's cool. Like it's part of the culture of that place.
Yeah.
And I wonder, I don't know what city you're at in Texas, but there are definitely parts of, I don't know. I imagine there are Jewish places and Jewish spaces to go to that aren't just like, well, it's all about God.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, like you said, you're atheist, I'm agnostic. I think it is, I've avoided that kind of thing because to me that is very religious centered, but I don't know. I think there's one synagogue here, so
Yeah, but I mean, have you done research online and looked for any sort of like Jewish community stuff or Jewish dating stuff? Because listen, you're not the only Jewish person in Texas, and I guarantee you there are other people who are feeling the way that you're feeling that want to be congregating like with each other or dating with each other and mixing with each other, and it doesn't have to be religious based. I'm a Reformed Jew, like I was raised like that, and that's like, it's just like the bare minimum of being a Jew. And like that, it's very casual, it's not like religious it is culture focused. It's not as religious as like being a conservative or an Orthodox Jewish person. And I understand that it can feel ostracizing, but I wouldn't give up hope that there are more communities that you just don't know about yet where you are.
I bet you there's a JCC not too far. I mean, I don't know where you're at in Texas, but like a place like that it's a Jewish community center that's so, I mean, I live in the most like liberal agnostic place ever. So I'm surrounded by like Jewish spaces that are very much like God optional. But I feel like if you did a little poking, even on like Reddit, maybe like, I bet there are some spaces where, cause like it's so Jewish to be agnostic. I mean, like that's like a very like that's the trick is you say to any rabbi I'm an atheist, they go, well, that's very Jewish. So I feel like there have got to be pockets, and also, I mean, side note, my cousin used to be a rabbi in Texas, so I could
how funny
on the DL ask him for tips.
Oh, that's a good
that'd be
idea.
awesome, yeah.
Yeah, I could text him right after this and then just separately reach out to you and see what he says.
Oh, I'd love that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I love expanding your area. It doesn't necessarily mean you have to move. Like you could have like kind of a long distance fun, like flingy thing. Or, somebody that you visit here and there, and that's great. Or maybe somebody wants to move to where you are if it gets serious enough,
Yeah, expanding your area is good too. Like that. I do like that idea because I'm a big advocate of long distance relationships. I think those are more fun anyway than having somebody up your ass all day long every day. It gives you something to look forward to, and it gives you someone to communicate with and sext with and flirt with and all that fun stuff. That beginning period of a relationship is the most fun part of the relationship, where you're constantly talking on the phone, making plans to see each other. Like that is fun.
And long distance extends that.
Yes,
kind of.
it does.
Yeah.
It does extend that.
Yeah. Also, I wanted to say JSwipe is real. It is the #1 Jewish dating app.
Oh my God! Look at Rachel Bloom with your finger on the pulse of all Jews.
I will look into that immediately after.
Yeah, and just really in your head, like, don't catastrophize the fact that you're from Israel and that you're Jewish. Like that's okay. That's okay. And most people who are reasonable will understand that. You're not going to want to go on a second date with any guy that's not going to understand that anyway. And also, you don't have to divulge that immediately.
Yeah.
But be a little bit more like broad-minded, not to the point of being naive. You know what's happening in the world. We all do. We're all aware of what's going on. But just to be a little bit more open-minded and give people a little bit more credit. If you start to understand, if you go on a couple dates with somebody that doesn't know you're Israeli or they don't know you're Jewish, and after a couple dates, you're going to know whether or not to share that information with them.
That's a fair point.
You could also try doing it on, it's like Hinge, right? You could also try doing it, see what happens. do you have, I don't know if you have a close friend that like maybe you could give them your Hinge password and they could check messages for you and just be like, hey, so what is it? Like, so that way you don't have to read, just in case like you start getting bombarded with stuff. Again, I've never been on apps, so I don't know what apps look like really. But like, is there like a friend that you could be like, hey, could you just, I started doing this a week ago. Can you just take a look through the messages? Let me know what the vibe is. And if they're like, I don't see anything. And then you know it's like safe. And that way you haven't read a ton of terrible things.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, I think my main concern is, if I wait 2 or 3 dates to divulge this like key part of just my upbringing, even if it's not, my life now, to just, spring it on someone a few dates in. But I get it. Like it is protecting myself too, and getting to know someone before, if I'm feeling nervous, before divulging that.
Do you say agnostic Jew in your profile?
To be honest, I don't know. I think I put just agnostic.
Because if you say agnostic Jew, then you're like kind of letting people know like you're Jewish, and anyone who's like doesn't want to date a Jew, period, won't date you. I feel like that might help narrow some stuff down too.
Yeah, that's true.
One something I listened to recently, The Daily just did a piece on dating over 50 online, which is not necessarily your situation, but there were some really good tips in there about, it's the haystack theory, they say, like how do you find a needle in a haystack? Light the haystack on fire. And so like basically it talks about like totally reinventing your online persona and like really whittling down to like, here's actually who I do want, rather than having the broadest possible results. And a lot of people have found some success with that. Just check that out. There's a bunch of good tips in that.
That does make sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. You are weeding people out.
Yeah.
I just wouldn't want her to become a target, for
Totally.
people who are like,
Totally.
Let
me make my stance on Hinge.
Yeah. Like,
That's why I'm like, is there someone who could like go through the first
you're saying to
batch for
identify
you?
herself as a Jew, as agnostic Jew, and then have someone.
Yeah, people like see agnostic Jew. That means certain things to different people, and then see like what the type of messages that come in, and then like maybe you have a friend who helps you like whittle through. That way, it's not just all on you if the messages get really like volatile.
Yeah, I could probably ask my sister to do that. She'd probably love that.
Yeah,
Good.
This is
that's
when
a
I'm
great
I'm an
idea.
only child. This is when I get really jealous of having a sibling.
Yeah.
That sounds really nice.
Yeah, sisters love this kind of stuff. All right, well, will you let us know how it goes?
I will. Yes, thank you all so much.
Also, I'll message my cousin.
Oh yeah.
Yes,
Thank
Jewish
you,
thing
Rachel.
ever. Like, I'll just ask my
Exactly.
cousin.
Let's.
Perfect.
Yeah. Is he single?
He's super not.
Oh, okay. Well, maybe he has some Jewish single
I think,
friends.
yeah.
I think you have to have a more optimistic outlook. Be hopeful and be optimistic.
The whole place is godless.
And also,
Yeah,
sister,
it is.
like listeners, if you are those sisters who have a brother, send us an email.
Sweet.
All right. Thank you so much, Maya.
Okay, thank you all.
Bye, Maya.
Good luck.
Bye.
I feel like we gave her 8 different things to
I
do.
know.
We're like,
Good, though. Lots of things to
I've
try.
heard of this thing called Chase.
well, you were right on the money
I
on
guess
that.
true.
Someone's paying attention.
We have one more caller. We can either take our little break and come back for our caller, or
Okay, we'll do that. We'll take a break and we'll be right back with Rachel Bloom. And we're back.
we are back. Our last caller today is Deanna. She says, "Dear Chelsea, here's my situation. I'm in my early 40s, never married, no children. I have a long-term boyfriend of almost 8 years. He came with a dog, Yama. Over the years, Yama and I created a very strong bond. Through COVID, moving to different states, countless hikes and backpacking trips, and working remotely, he has been by my side. Best coworker ever. In the beginning of October, his health took a turn. He went from 60 pounds to 40 in a matter of weeks. We treated him for all sorts of things. Nothing worked. My strong dog, who hiked up countless mountains with me, couldn't even get up the stairs. The vet deduced it had to be cancer, so on October 23rd, we said goodbye. It happened fast, and I've been taking it really hard. I'm not exaggerating when I say I haven't loved anyone or felt closer to anyone than I did with him. Then add this election business, and I just feel so lost and alone. I know you're a dog mom, and I know you've suffered great loss in that arena. Any advice on how to press forward? At this moment, I never want another pet again. The idea of going through this again feels masochistic, but I know that's my grief talking. Appreciate any advice you can share. Love you and all that you do, Deanna."
Hi, Deanna.
Hi. How are you?
We have another dog lover here today, Rachel Bloom.
Nice to meet you both.
Nice to meet you. I really feel you.
Oh, I'm sorry that you lost your lover.
Thank you. That was really hard to listen to again.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay.
Honestly, you need to get another dog. You do. You're going to love another dog just as much as you loved this dog. Your love is not like, like it doesn't.
It's not finite.
You need to give your love to another person or another thing or another animal. And like, that's how it happens. As soon as I lose it, as soon as I see one of my dogs going downhill, I get another dog so that it will soften the blow when I lose my dog. Because there are so much love to be had in this world. There are so many animals that need to be loved in the way that you're discussing your love or the way that you expressed your love for your dog. You have to give that away to someone else, and you will. And that will help you heal. I promise you that will help you heal. Like you don't have to get a puppy. Go get a rescue dog,
Yes,
go
That's
look.
all I do.
Yes, of course. And go look at and fall in love and transfer that love that you had. You don't even have to think about it. It will happen.
You could
Okay.
also try fostering
Yeah.
as like a way station if like you're not ready. Also, I don't know if this is what you're feeling, but I feel like there's a certain shame sometimes over people mourning pets where they're like, I know it's just a pet. I know and I think in case that's a part of you that's like, I don't know why I can't get over this, like just allowing yourself to feel the grief over this being that you loved. And if it were a human, what grief would you allow yourself?
Rachel, that's exactly what I'm feeling now. Yep. Thank you for that validation.
And also, you're saying, I don't know if I could ever go through this again. Like that, you can. You're sitting right here. You're going through it. You are surviving. You can go through this again. You're going to go find another dog. You're going to foster it or you're going to rescue it, and you're going to form a bond with it. And if it doesn't work with the first dog or you don't feel it, then great. Then you'll get a different dog if you foster a dog or if you have. But I promise you, when you adopt a dog, it's very unlikely that you are not going to have the same feelings that you're describing. It won't be the exact same because no two dogs are the same, but your love is the same. The love that you extend to a pet is not measurable. It's not like you love one dog more than the next. I've had about 6 dogs now in my life, and my favorite is always the one that's alive. So like it's a less emotional way of looking at it. But I promise you, like when you have that kind of love to expend, you need to expend it.
Okay. That's really good to hear. Yeah.
And also grieve all you want. Like what Rachel said, absolutely. But also think about how you could impact another dog's life with all that love.
That's true. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good luck.
Send us
thank
a
you
picture.
for having me on.
Yeah, of
send us a
course.
picture
It was
when you
nice-
find your new buddy.
Yeah. If you find your new lover, send us a picture, please. We
I
love
sure
that.
will. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for
Thank you.
calling.
Thanks, Deanna.
Thank you. Bye.
It is sad when people are debilitated by their pet's loss, which is what's going to happen to you, unfortunately.
I see it coming down the pike. And I mean, I joke in the special about pet loss. The websites for pet loss are the most embarrassingly earnest things, like the art around pet loss. All of it is so embarrassingly earnest, and also it makes me very emotional. And I think they're people. So it's okay to grieve them.
Absolutely, it's okay
the
to
bond
grieve
is
them.
so powerful with dogs, especially I think with cats if you're a cat person. But
And we
it's
have
so
a kid, and
powerful.
we still, it hasn't diminished our love for our dog.
Yeah, I know. Some people have kids, and then
Yeah.
they're like, "Oh, we gave our dog back. We gave our dog away." I'm like,
don't,
"What?
I
How
can't.
could you
I don't.
do that?"
Also, my dog and my daughter are like best friends. Well, I think the dog tolerates her, but my daughter calls Wiley her sister.
Oh,
That's so cute.
She literally
very
says,
sweet.
like, other people at school be like, I have a brother, I have a sister. She'll be like, I have a sister, and she is a dog.
I love
And that's
that.
what we teach her.
I love that. Thank you, Rachel Bloom, for being here. Make sure you guys catch her special on Netflix. Her new special is called Death Let Me Do My Special. It's on Netflix. Make sure you watch it and look out for Rachel Bloom. Everywhere. She's just around the corner.
It'll only take me 50 minutes.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, always. We'll see you guys next week. Bye.